Hey guys, how you doing today? Um, I just listened to Joe Rogan with Crystal Ball and Sauger, and they got talking about the subject of looting. And there was just one aspect of it that I just think I was a bit surprised Crystal didn't bring up, um, and I want to address it. So they get talking about the subject of looting, and that they separate looting from protesting, right? Which is good. And Pete Sauger and Joe Rogan begin asking the question, how do we stop looting? How do we prevent looting from happening? How do we prevent rioting? And the only way to do that is with a police crackdown. That's their solution. They want protests to continue going on. They agree that protests are good. They want to see those protests happen. But they also want to see something done in regards to looters and looting. And the point that didn't actually come up in the conversation is that we have evidence, we have photos and witnesses and video of the police smashing property, police emptying vehicles, like police vehicles of bricks that they'll put somewhere. So they themselves or other people in the neighborhood, it will encourage property damage. We have evidence of them participating in looting. And that's really what it comes down to is that, well, if you want to prevent looters and rioters, sure, you need to have police action, but you need to, first and foremost, prevent the police from engaging in looting themselves and property damage themselves, right? That what the police are doing is they're engaging in something called an agent provocateur. They're engaging in this age-old disruptive tactic where they take one of their own, have them dress up as a civilian, and then act as a rioter or a looter in order to incite others to riot or loot. And that person is called an agent provocateur. And so if you are genuinely concerned, and this is where the hate on with the police is coming, right? You've got people on the right saying, "Oh well, the police need to go in and they need to stop these protesters. They need to stop this. There needs to be some kind of crackdown." While the police themselves are the ones that are participating in the act that you want them to crack down upon. And so the question you need to really be asking yourself is, why are they doing that? And what can you actually do to prevent them from doing that? I mean, why they're doing that is very simple. They want to escalate to violence. Because if it escalates into violence, then that is a game that they can win. They hate standing in, they're not interested in standing in a line, right? They're not interested in standing in a line and banging a shield and having people scream at them, right? Maybe have somebody throw something at them every so often, right? They're not interested in that. They want to get in there and they want to crack some heads. They want to shoot those guns. They want to use the equipment they've got, right? They want to, they are looking for the fight, right? They're looking for the fight. And so by escalating the looting, right, by engaging in the looting and by encouraging the looting, right, they create their own villains because that's what they want. They want to have a fight. And so they find the people who they can have a fight with. And so if you're interested in stopping the looting and rioting, just ask the police to stop participating in it. That would be the first thing that you should expect. And it's very interesting to me that in this sort of conversation, this is getting completely lost. That, sure, yeah, there are citizens that have engaged. Oh, yes, because this is the thing, right? People follow their leaders. People follow, they follow what is being instructed of them. If everybody is engaged in the same sort of activity, and if everybody is following sort of a rule of law, then most people will go along with that, right? Most people will go along with sort of what's considered normal behavior. Well, once you find out that the police are the ones that are inciting violence and inciting inciting looting and inciting protests, right? It's very easy to conclude that there is no rule of law, that the rules certainly don't apply to the police. Like the police are allowed to publicly execute people, engage in looting themselves, engage in property destruction themselves, and it's very easy to follow that people would just go, "Oh, well, okay. Like if that's what we're doing, then let's do that." And if the rules don't apply to the police, then certainly why should they apply to anyone? And because the police themselves have engaged in these acts of looting and in rioting, they themselves are opening the society up to the anarchy that they're supposedly supposed to be cracking down on. Fundamentally, what you're asking is you're asking a citizen to act with more moral conscience or more insight, intelligence, or wisdom than a person who is legally allowed to murder them in the street, which is a cop. I don't think that's a very realistic take to have. I think we should expect more from the police forces. We should hold them to a higher standard, obviously. But as far as I'm concerned, if we were going to take seriously the idea that, oh, well, looting and rioting is bad, well, then, yeah, you should ask the police why they're doing it. And this is sort of the great moral leveler, in my view, on this issue, which, like, unless we're actually going to actively charge the police with the crimes that they've committed in regards to rioting and looting, then why are we complaining when citizens do it? I'm not in favor of looting and rioting, but I completely understand it. It makes total sense to me. Like, why would a person engage in looting and rioting when the police are engaging in looting and rioting? Oh, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. Especially when you see, like, these big corporations who, like, you absolutely despise if you have a brain in your head. Like, these big giant entities that came in and destroyed your small business, like, communities. And I'm glad that came up in that conversation, because there's this idea that, like, we should really care about small businesses, and the rioters and the looters hurt small businesses, but, like, nobody cared about these small businesses. No one's cared about these small businesses at all through, like, the coronavirus pandemic. Nobody cared about the small businesses whatsoever. Huge amounts of small businesses shut down because of that, and nobody cared about them at all. And so it's kind of quaint now, you know? It's just kind of quaint now. Like, what we're experiencing is, like, a cultural burn down. People want this society to burn down. They want the society to be completely reconfigured and to be completely restructured. They're not happy with this at all. And yeah, people are going to get hurt, but there's this sort of sense that, like, that was going to happen in any case. That the way our society is structured, it's an inevitability that people will be hurt to the maximum level. Like, the collapses that we're experiencing, we're just going to keep experiencing because of how our society is actually built. And it just becomes difficult to believe in some kind of centralized control system of any sort when the people who are at the controls are not even paying attention and aren't held to account. And there's just absolutely god-awful things that are coming out. And just absolutely god-awful things about the president, about the people who are controlling the place. And just... Like, your heart does go out to people who are harmed, but at the same time, there's this just seething desire. It is like Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, where at the end, the protagonist, black fellow living in the ghetto, smashes up the store of a white man that he works for. And, like, yeah, that white guy had his business smashed up, and it hurt him. But that the protagonist of the story had to do the right thing, had to restructure the society and show that this can't stay this way. And I think that's the most important thing that we're seeing, is that this can't stay this way. You can't live in a society where the police treat you as a villain, where the police are there to be your enemy. We can't live in a society like that. And I refuse to live in a society where the police view a person an enemy based on the color of their skin or based on their economic profile. Like, I just don't want to live in that kind of society, and I just hope other people don't as well. And people are finding out that we do live in that kind of society, and so they're willing to burn it down. Because they get pushed too far, because they're just absolutely done with it. And yeah, don't get me wrong, like, there's going to be the hangers-on, the opportunists, the people who walk by like a store that's in a process of looting and just say, like, what the hell, let's go, let's jump in. But that's, like, once the fire is started, right? Like, you can't really boil this down to an individual level at some point. Like, once the fire of the protests and once the fire of the riot begins, it takes on a life and a spirit of its own. And mad things will happen and can happen. Which is why it's so important, in my view, and I cycle around on this point, it's so important that the police stop participating in it. And stop edging it on, and stop trying to make it happen. I think that should be the first thing that we should be concerned about. If you're concerned about ending looting, and if you're concerned about ending rioting, the first thing you should be asking the police is, why are you participating in it? Seems pretty straightforward to me. Alright guys, that's the end of this video. I hope you're doing well out there. Love you all.